Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience and for joining us today. So, I have a great duty here to make an introduction to someone who I find as a remarkable trailblazer, being the first woman to be Attorney General of the UK, and to also be the first black woman who is Secretary General of the Commonwealth. Now, you might not all know her, but at the end of this conversation, you will know her and be as inspired as I am by her. Please welcome on stage, Baroness Scotland. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing remarkably well since I'm awake.
So, for the people around here who might not know what the Commonwealth is all about and what it means to be the General Secretary of the Commonwealth, do you mind sharing a little bit about what that entails?
Well, the Commonwealth is made up of 56 countries. That's about 2.7 billion people, 60% of whom are under the age of 30. So the majority of our family are young. But we cover 5 regions of the world and 6 of the great basins. We have some of the most advanced, richest communities in the world, and some of the smallest, most vulnerable communities in the world. So we have a significant proportion of the indigenous communities. And we have 33 small states, 25 small island developing states. So just to give you the example, the biggest country in our Commonwealth is India, which has almost 1.4 billion people. Some of the smallest are Nauru, Tuvalu, Kiribati. Nauru has about 11,000 people. Yet in our family, each island, each country, no matter how big, no matter how rich, no matter how poor, is equal. And when they sit around the Commonwealth table, they are able to share all the experiences. And what's quite extraordinary is whether they are large, developed countries or small, indigenous communities, they're facing the same issues. And one of the major issues our Commonwealth has highlighted since 1989, that's 3 years before the first COP, was climate change. We undertook a comprehensive assessment of what was happening environmentally. And because we have 33 small states, those small states were really banging the drum in 1989, saying that we have to address this, because if we don't, some of us are no longer going to be here. And so at that stage, the Commonwealth undertook some really extensive analysis and assessments of what was happening globally. And we said in 1989 that if we did not address this issue of climate change urgently, then it would be and was becoming and posing an existential threat to all of us. And so climate has been something that we've looked at for as long as I can remember, but also the other thing that we have done, and we've done this for more than 50 years, is concentrate on young people. I'm wearing my Commonwealth Youth Year 2023, and that was the 50th year of the Commonwealth, dealing with young people. And we were supposed to have that wonderful anniversary in Pakistan. And it was supposed to be in January of last year to have a ministerial meeting in Pakistan. But if you may remember, Pakistan was devastated by terrible floods. 1/3 of that country was underwater. Thousands and thousands of people died. And even now, Pakistan is struggling to get back up on her feet. And so what we find is when any of our countries are in trouble, we come together to assist, to support, and to bring succor. And as a result of not being able to host the ministerial meeting in Pakistan, Pakistan came to us in London, and we held the Pakistan-led Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting in Marlborough House Garden, which is where our heads have always met. It's where the head office, where I sit, is. And we had the most wonderful meeting. And I think that was a demonstration of the love and support that our members have one for the other. So if you think about us as a very diverse, multifaceted family who basically love each other.
Wow, that's a very beautiful description of the Commonwealth. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for dipping into the issue of climate change and contextualizing it with, in relation to young people. But climate change is something that I think everyone here is aware about, we all care about. It's a huge issue. It's so grand that I actually feel very intimidated sometimes describing the enormity of it, because it's frightening, often sometimes feels disempowering, but it means so many different things to different people right now. And you hold a very unique position where you hold space for people in completely different regions of the world. Now, I'm now a British national, but I was born in Nigeria. You were born in Dominica, and we're here in the UK. Now, this is a triangle, you know, we're seeing a little triangle form, but the experiences of children in Nigeria, Dominica, and the UK are completely different. And I just wanted to ask if you can help contextualize it, because the threats of climate change, the threat that it holds in these different spaces is different for these different environments. And I just wanted to ask if you could shed a bit more light on that and contextualize the issue for us a bit more.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is we absolutely have not to be overwhelmed by climate change. Yes, we are the first generation to be really affected by the aberrant consequences of climate change. But we are also the last generation to be able to do something about it. And that is and should actually be incredibly empowering. Because if you think about the rapidity of the development we've had just in the last 15 years, every single person in this room probably has a smartphone. Anyone put up their hand if they don't have one? They didn't exist 13 years ago. We are able to calculate now with a speed and an accuracy the likely consequences of what will happen in the future. Within seconds, things that would have taken us many years to calculate, we can now do very quickly. So if you look at the opportunities that artificial intelligence now creates for us, we also have to remember, if you look at every innovation that's ever been created, most of those who created the greatest scientific development were under the age of 35. Wow. Newton was 32. So the power and opportunity which rests within our young people, I find incredibly exciting. And I have to tell you that I've spent my whole life with people telling me I was crazy, that which I dreamt or thought could happen was impossible. And I remember being told that again when I became Secretary General. And I found it actually quite reassuring, because they'd been telling me that I was mad since I was 5, so nothing had changed. And one of the things that I saw was that we weren't coming together. When I looked at the issues on climate change, I saw that we were addressing it in silos. So you talk to the climatologists, who didn't talk to the biomimicries, who didn't talk to the people who were doing circular economy, who didn't talk to the people who were doing symbiotic economy, who definitely didn't talk to the oceanologists. And I saw that we needed to have a holistic understanding. And we think there are huge differences between a child in Dominica, a child in Nigeria, and a child in London. But actually, there isn't as great a difference as you really think, because they're experiencing the same thing, sometimes slightly differently. And if you think about where we are now, climate change is real for people in London, because now the basements in Chelsea are being flooded. Trees are falling. In the Cotswolds, where I have a cottage, the local river broke its banks and flooded all the homes in the village. My son and my husband and my dog had to swim out of the first window, down the garden, to get out. So the impact of climate change now, unfortunately, is touching on everyone. And when it starts to touch people and their lives, they start to understand that the difference between those of us living in the Caribbean and those of us living in Africa and in Asia and in the Pacific and in Europe, those differences are diminishing. But we have to advocate for that. We have to speak about it. And we have to concentrate on the fact that we are creating the solutions. In 2016, one of the first things I did when I was appointed as Secretary General is to hold a 3-day meeting. I didn't let anyone leave, actually. Between all of them, the climatologists, the oceanologists, I basically said, look, we're going to have to fix this, because we hold this world in common. And if we have to come up with a solution, we have to come up with, what does that mean for our land? Because everything we're doing on the land is impacting our ocean. Everything that we're doing on land and ocean is impacting our atmosphere. You can't separate them. There is an interaction between all of them, and we have to solve this. And I'm a lawyer, okay, so I love facts and evidence. And I looked at the IPCC report in 2015, which said that we had time. And they were looking at the changes being by 2050. It wasn't going to be 2050. I looked at it and said, you're crazy. This thing is like an absolute bullet train which is going at 400 miles an hour, and you think that you are going to slow it down to 399 miles an hour. Guess what? We're still going to be really dead. So we've got to not only stop the train, we've got to back it up. And so I said in 2016 that we needed a regenerative approach to climate change, and we needed to reverse it. I can tell you, when I said we had to reverse climate change, not adapt it, not just mitigate it, some said that I was putting our organization at reputational risk because I was clearly crazy. 3 years later, 4 years later, what was everybody saying? We needed a regenerative approach, and we had to reverse it. And that's what we're doing now. So I think this triangulation is really important. And everything we've done in the Commonwealth has been to enable that practically to be delivered. Because we need to put the knowledge, the expertise into the hands of those who are able to make the change. But we have to understand that that's our hands. Don't look for someone else. It starts with each of us. So each of us has to say, I can do something. I am part of the solution. Don't look for others to be the solution. We are. And the other thing I think so many of us don't realize is we have as much power as we choose to take. And the great trick is people are constantly trying to tell us that we're powerless, that there's nothing we can do. And that's a lie. And if there was one thing I wanted to do is to myth bust. And so I have said to every single one of us, we can do this if we choose. It's just we can't do it alone. And if we could just do an experiment, I mean, if I bang my foot onto this stage and make a noise, now if everybody in this room bangs their foot on the stage in which they stand, we'll make an amazing noise and people will hear us. And that's what coming together means. So let's just do an experiment. Is everyone ready with their foot on the ground? Particularly those who aren't wearing trainers, but even if you are, bash it really hard. I'm going to count to 3, and we're all going to bang our foot. And let's see how much noise we can make. Are you ready? Are you ready? Yes. Are you ready? Yes. Okay. 1, 2, 3. They'll hear us. They'll hear us. And so the thing that I have been absolutely focused on for the last 8 years is giving people the information, the opportunity, the tools that they need to be that difference. And we started, as many of you will know, not just with the that 3-day coming together, but out of that we created something called Common Earth, to say that all the commons were heard and we were going to work together. The first thing that came out of it was the Commonwealth Blue Charter, because we weren't looking at oceans. And there's a great oceanologist, Tom Guru, from Jamaica, who came to that meeting, and he was listening to everything that I was saying. And he said, but you know, Secretary General, I think it's too late. And I said, what do you mean, Tom, it's too late? He said, no one is looking at oceans. And the ocean has been absorbing the heat coming from the land. And what is going to happen is that the ocean, which has always acted as a coolant, is going to turn into an accelerant. Because what happens when a hurricane or a cyclone passes over water is that the coolness of the water drags the heat from the cyclone or the hurricane, and it diminishes over the water. And that has been one of the wonderful reactions we've been able to rely on. But he said in the next couple of years, the reverse is going to happen, because the ocean is getting hotter and hotter. And as the hurricane passes over the water, it will become an accelerant. Yeah. So he said in the next few years, those hurricanes are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it takes about 10 years to get the world to come up with a action on oceans. So he said, it's too late. Well, you should never tell me it's too late. And you should never tell me it can't be done. Because what I said is, it cannot be too late, and we have to try. And as a result, we went from that meeting to the first ocean meeting that had ever happened in New York. And by the grace of God, Fiji was in the chair, and Fiji is one of our countries. So I rang the Prime Minister, Frank Bainimarama, and I said, Frank, will you give me space? This was 3 weeks before. People said, you can't get space 3 weeks before. And I went, watch me. So we got, Frank gave us space. We had so he represented the Pacific. We had Seychelles president, who said he'd send his vice president to represent Africa. We had 2 countries from the Caribbean. We had Cyprus to represent Europe, and we had Bangladesh to represent Asia. And within 3 weeks, we got together and we posited the creation of the Blue Charter. And my team were thinking, how are we going to go to we haven't got a Blue Charter. I said, don't be silly, we've got it in my head. So we're going to talk about the Blue Charter and ask those present, do they want it? And at the end of the meeting, everyone having had the discussion, I thought I might as well punt it. So I said, well, do I take it then that we all want a Blue Charter? And there was a sort of standing ovation. There was virtually no room in the room. And I said, well, I think I'll take that as a yes then. And we went back, we wrote the Blue Charter. My team was absolutely amazing. And by April 2018, we put the Blue Charter before our 50, I think it was then 54 leaders, and the Blue Charter became a reality within 10 months, not 10 years. Wow. So we've made it into an implementation, action-oriented charter. And if you look at what we've been able to do on oceans between then and now, we have made a quantifiable difference. And we've done the same with the Living Lands Charter to implement the 3 Rio Conventions. And we've now created common sensing, which is using geospatial data to better understand and better predict. And we've created a climate finance access hub to enable our member states to have the information they need in order to implement mitigation and adaptation. Wow. And we've had virtually no money. So with just 8.5 million, we've already delivered into the hands of our member states $360 million, and we have $500 million in the pipeline. Wow. And I sometimes dream about what I could do if someone gave me the money they're giving everyone else. Yeah. Now, I'm one of 12 children. So I'm used to buying wholesale and delivering more. And I reckon if I could persuade them to give me, I don't know, just 100 million, I'd say, look out what we'd do. So we're hoping that Azerbaijan, who's the new COP president, they've indicated, I've had a number of conversations with the president of Azerbaijan and the president of COP, and they have now said that they're going to make small states the focus of their next COP29, because we know it's the small states who are on the front line. They're the canaries that are going down and they're not coming back.
Wow. Firstly, you had me spellbound. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all you're doing. And can we please give her a round of applause? feel like I should have just brought Manchester with me. So after this conversation, I'm gonna head back to Manchester, and there's gonna be a world of young people that are, I guess, slightly a bit more disconnected to the mobilization taking place in London right now. And I didn't even give a description of what I do. So I run an organization called Young Manchester. We fund youth organizations across Manchester, youth centers, youth clubs. We fund environmental programs for children and young people in the city to engage with, to get more like environmentally literate, and just different things. It's been an interesting journey. However, when preparing for this and speaking to some young people and the youth workers that work with them, they presented the interesting challenge back to me, which is, I guess, the quandary and the dilemmas they face around living their life in a way that is aligned with tackling this issue, whether it's from choosing not to get a car, or, if they're old enough to drive, or, just going vegetarian, so on and so forth. However, they're also faced with the dilemma that some of them live in contexts where, fast foods are a lot cheaper than getting fresh fruit, or, how that AI, for example, a very, very fast-flowing technology, like is really pushing the world ahead. However, comes across with some climate implications as well. This year is on track to probably be one of the largest years in terms of carbon emission, and they're met with all these moral dilemmas. Biggest of which is, how could they keep loving Taylor Swift when she travels so much with a private jet? So it's a very interesting challenge that they hold. To all the Taylor Swift fans, it's cool. She's amazing and phenomenal. But yeah, they hold this very interesting challenge and tension, and the access to these conversations you're having, the opportunity to take agency and innovate in the same way that we believe that everyone here has the potential to tackle this issue. It doesn't feel as tangible to them. So I guess as a vessel who's gonna head back, I can be your ambassador.
Done.
Do I get knighted as well? How do I go back to Manchester and empower these young people? They already do have power, but maybe platform them in a way that allows them to be an active part of the solution, and maybe connect with other young people across the Commonwealth family, should I say?
Well, the first thing I would say is to get all of them, without exception, to sign up and become part of the Commonwealth Youth Network. We have a network for almost anything that you're interested in. So there is the climate change network. There are networks in relation to entrepreneurship. Anything almost that a young person is interested in, the Commonwealth has a network that you can join. And one of the opportunities we have, and that's why I say transitioning from where we are to where we need to be, often needs to have some sort of technical assistance to help you get there. And that's what we in the Commonwealth are creating, the toolkits that can facilitate, so you don't have to start from ground zero. You can come and help us to shape the tools that aren't just needed in Manchester, but are needed everywhere. And this is a really dynamic opportunity. So, for example, I have been totally absorbed by the opportunities that technologically there now are for us. But I also understood, if you look at AI, the opportunity for young people who are not economically advantaged to take advantage of the AI training courses are really quite low, because some of these courses, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. So I'm actually, I think, a very dangerous person to know. I should warn you all. But I met the head of Intel, and very generously they offered to give us 1,000 training courses, which was wonderful because it was going to be worth about $10 million worth of training, which was fantastic. And by the end of the hour and a quarter, I said, I thought that 10,000 sounded so much better. Because I've got, 2.7 billion people, and 60% of them are under the age of 30. And she said, yeah, I think 10,000 sounds better too. I'm so glad you agree. And then what we did is we created a leaders AI program. And then we really had a deep discussion about the need to educate our young people so that everyone could understand AI, the good things about AI, but also the bad things, so they can make judicious choices. And so together, we have now, with a number of other agencies, and we've created an AI consortium with all the Silicon Valley people, but we've created an AI Academy. And if you go on to our AI Academy, which is in the Commonwealth website, you will find that all of these AI training courses are there, 6 of them, and they're all free.
Wow.
So any young person in my Commonwealth who does not take all of those AI courses, I want to know why.
Okay. I have a mission, clearly, to go back to Manchester to do this. And it feels like there's something very tangible for everyone here to take away with them. Join the network, realize you're part of a wider family, and also add an extra 0 after everything and say, doesn't that sound great?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so, so much for taking the time today. Really, really appreciate the conversation. Oh, okay,
yeah,
fantastic,
sure,
cool.
sure,
Because
absolutely.
I was gonna apologize for a second there because I made a deep commitment to ask a question, get a question from the audience, and I'm looking out, and I see some hands. Fantastic. Okay. Unfortunately, we only have time for one question, so you're the star. Oh, okay. Yeah. That sounds good.
Thank you so much. And also just to say to your point about we've experienced climate emergency here. I live in Notting Hill and my home was flooded in 2021. You can look it up. I lost everything I own. I can't get it insured and I wouldn't have got any insurance except I'm a journalist and made a fuss. So it's right here, right now. But my question is, thank you so much for everything. What would be, if we feel we want to have more power, what is the greatest thing when we leave today that we can do? Thank you.
I think one of the greatest things you can do is to join us. And also to understand that every one of us has a specific skill. For example, you're a journalist, so you can communicate the story, you can tell the truth about what's really happening. We, in effect, need to put a pin on every leader's chair so they can't sit down without dealing with this issue, because there is an urgency now that is absolutely palpable. We have very, very little time left, but there's just enough time. We're at 1.5 now. That means that for some of our small island states in the Commonwealth, time has run out. So, for example, when the ministers from Tuvalu leave their country, they're never absolutely sure that it will be there when they fly back. Now, that is an omnipresent threat. And so I think acknowledge the skill sets that you have. Identify the opportunities you have to make a difference and to be that difference, and then take it. And think absolutely clinically about it. And the most important thing is never think that you don't matter, or the skill you have does not make a difference. Think about all the friends you have. the conversations when you leave this room that you can have. It's not just your power, it's the power of all of those around you. Because if this conversation stays just in this room, we won't be the difference we need to make. So it's the networks upon networks upon networks upon networks. And the social media opportunities now are much greater than we've ever had before. So grab it and just set yourself a target and know that the impossible, as Madiba said, is always impossible until it's done. And so I think back to I am impossible. Yeah. I'm one of 12 children born in one of the smallest islands in the Caribbean, Dominica. Only 72,000 people in my country. So if you ever have one Dominican in the room, you have a big percentage of my population.
Thank you so much for that question. Really, really appreciate it. I think that's all that we have time for, unfortunately. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.